Hey guys and gals, welcome back this week for another episode of Haunted Gaming. Today we're taking a look at the much requested creepypasta, Easter Egg, Snow on Mount Silver. This creepypasta begins with a player who tells us about how her and her brother grew up on Pokemon, and every time a new generation of Pokemon games came out, each sibling would get the opposite version. Years went by and the siblings collected more and more Pokemon games. Before the Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire generation of games released, the player's brother had obtained a Game Shark, and was interested in hacking and cheating, something that he couldn't perform before on a Pokemon game. The players first played on a Pokemon Blue cartridge, testing many in-game glitches out. Eventually, after using many codes, the siblings had glitched the game and made the cartridge completely unplayable. The brother mourned the loss of all his work and the broken game, and the player consoled her brother and later became opposed to the idea of hacking after she had seen the broken Pokemon Red cartridge. However, the player's brother took this broken Pokemon game as a challenge and began to hack and play games similar to what he had done with Pokemon Blue. Eventually, the siblings had lost their Game Shark during a renovation in their home. Pokemon Sapphire and Ruby eventually released, and both siblings found them to be lacking. So then they went back for some nostalgia and dug through their old electronic games and found Pokemon Gold and Silver and Crystal as well, their old game cartridges, as well as link cables, accessories, and Game Boy Color systems. The siblings began to check their old saves and decided to restart their copies of the game. The player found his old Game Shark as well that was once lost, and decided to use it while he was playing Pokemon Silver. The player told her brother, "That thing will kill your game, you know." The player's brother never liked the idea of his sister preaching about abusing pixels and decided to go off and play by himself. A couple of days passed and the player was out on the porch, about to battle the Elite Four. The player noticed that she had no good Pokemon to take on the Elite Four with, and decided to ask her brother if she could trade a Pokemon with her, and so she could battle the Elite Four. The player recently returned home from a friend's place a day ago as well, and had no idea what her brother was up to. The player noticed Pokemon game cartridges across the hallways, split in half and completely unusable. The player found her brother sitting on his bed, with his Game Boy in pieces, on the floor, completely smashed into pieces. The player asked her brother if he was okay, and the brother responded saying that it was awful, and he saw white and black everywhere. The player went to hug her brother, and the brother grabbed the Game Boy from her sister's pocket and threw it against the wall. The player checked her Game Boy and noticed that it still worked and opened it, and the Pokemon theme was playing. The brother started screaming, and the player screamed, clutching the Game Boy to her chest. The player's brother was sent to a psychiatric ward in the hospital for 2 days. No one could figure out why his behavior was so strange. The player had decided to keep the incident of her brother throwing the Game Boy against the wall and screaming to herself, and nobody else would know about it. One day the player was with her brother in the hospital, all alone, and the brother had told her to go to his room and get rid of his Game Shark and Pokemon games. The player was at school and kept her brother's words in her head. The player went home and wanted to throw the games away, but also wanted to play them because she was curious on what had scared her brother so much. The player went into her brother's room and noticed that the room was completely vacuumed. And the player looked under the bed and found a notebook, a Game Shark, and a copy of Pokemon Silver. The player looked inside the notebook and noticed that there was pen writing covered with black marker. The player held up the papers in the notebook to a light source and noticed that the handwriting was mostly illegible, and the player couldn't determine the codes that were written on it. Only the words Easter Egg, Snow on Mount Silver. The player then decided to play the Pokemon Silver game and see what had scared her brother so much. The game started and the player noticed a save file named Blake, with 999 hours logged into the game. The player selected the save file and the game began to load. A minute had passed and the game finally loaded, with the player on Mount Silver, with no sound, and the screen was all staticky because of the snow that was falling in the game. The player could barely see the in-game character due to the falling snow. The player tried to leave Mount Silver, but text boxes appeared stating not to leave. The player decided to keep moving up Mount Silver and noticed the in-game character was walking very slowly. As the player moved up the mountain, A text box appeared saying, "Meganium has died." The player was surprised and checked the Pokemon screen only to notice that Meganium's sprite was replaced with a red X. As the player moved forward, more Pokemon began to die, until all that was left was a Typhlosion. The player reached the summit and noticed Red was nowhere to be found, and snow stopped falling. The player noticed an item on the ground and went to go pick it up, but upon picking up the item, the Game Boy made a loud static noise, and the battle screen emerged. The player was now fighting a Celebi, and the Celebi appeared to be all blue, with a red glowing eye and some limbs missing. Celebi had used the move Perish Song, and the Game Boy made a loud noise and the screen went all white. All of the player's Pokemon had fainted, and the player believed that she would be in a Pokemon Center now, since all her Pokemon had fainted, but instead she was in a cave. The player checked the trainer card and noticed that the character sprite was missing legs, had only one red eye, and looked bluish, like the Celebi she had fought earlier. The player moved the character forward and noticed that as she was moving the character forward, text boxes appeared stating that it was cold, and finally a battle had started with Red. Red's sprite appeared bluish and disfigured as well. Red sent out his first Pokemon, a Venusaur that was level 0, and the player had sent out a Typhlosion. Both Pokemon had only 6 points of health left. Venusaur used Struggle and caused a point of damage to Typhlosion, and then fainted. A text box appeared stating Venusaur had died. Throughout the battle, each Pokemon Red would send out would be more and more disfigured than the last one. Finally, both Pokemon had died in the end, and Red appeared on the screen. Red stated that it was over, and he used Destiny Bond, and a loud noise emerged from the Game Boy, and the screen went white. Moments later, the screen went black, and the noise was all gone. The player took the game and the Game Shark and threw them into the garbage. The player continued to play unhacked versions of Pokemon, while her brother gave up the game for good. That was a pretty lengthy creepypasta, and I think it's really well written, but I mean, it doesn't use any unnecessary elements or anything like gore or stuff like that. I mean, it all seems very realistic and creepy. I really like the psychotic brother they put into the game, like the whole idea of the brother being in the hospital and stuff. I mean, it really creeped me out and made me wonder just genuinely what he was so scared of from this one game. I mean, there are some weird things to the story, however. I mean, like, if the brother had gotten so scared from this game, I mean, like, let's think about it. He was ripping cartridges in half and throwing game consoles against the walls and screaming whenever he heard Pokemon music. I mean, if this is a result from this game, why didn't the sister feel the same way? I mean, all she did was cry. I mean, that's literally what was written in the creepypasta. All she did was cry. She didn't go all crazy or anything. And even if I played the game, I would be a little freaked out, but I wouldn't go insane or anything. I mean, this is the only complaint I have. Really. And the rest is very good, and it reminded me a lot of Strangled Red because of the siblings. Another thing I always ask when I read these creepypastas is, can it be real? Absolutely not. I mean, if this was an official cartridge, hackers would have discovered this a long time ago. I mean, this would be information that me and you would know. Guaranteed. And again, a Game Shark, I mean, throughout this creepypasta, I mean, they reference that Game Shark had destroyed their games. That isn't actually possible as far to my knowledge, because Game Sharks can't really destroy a game cartridge. See, Game Sharks and Action Replays or anything else, anything that is used for hacking, like Game Genies and whatnot, all they do is, like, actually alter the game's memory as it's being played, like what's in the RAM, really. Like, I mean, it's altering memory that's being used in the game on the fly. It can't alter, like, actual code in the game. The worst that could happen to you is, like, a save file being corrupt. And all you would have to do to fix that is basically start a new game, or maybe change the battery in the cartridge. So yeah, it can't really be real, but then again, it's a creepypasta. And it's meant to be an entertaining, scary story. And I would recommend all of you to go check it out. Links are in the description below. That's really all I have to say about this creepypasta. I thought it was really well written. I love the whole psychiatric hospital part and just the whole brother being scared of this game and everything. I mean, I felt really interested in knowing what he was scared of. And I think if the player's reaction was similar to her brother's, this creepypasta would have been a whole lot better. I mean, that's really all I gotta say about it. Well, guys and gals, thanks for watching another episode of Haunted Gaming. If you like what you saw, then like, comment, and subscribe. This is Some Ordinary Gamers, out.